Ravens flock. Ravens flock. Ravens flock. What's going on, everybody? Hope you guys are enjoying your day. We got some Ravens to talk about, so let's get right into it. Okay. So, Ravens flock, how are you guys doing today? Happy Victory Monday to all. I mean, we played that game on Saturday, so it's weird to say that, but still, a Victory Monday is a Victory Monday, and this Victory Monday is very special to us because with that win against the Atlanta Falcons, the Baltimore Ravens were able to clinch a playoff spot. So no matter what happens, the Ravens will be in the playoffs this season. Can we just take a moment to enjoy this for a second? I understand all of the things that have happened this year. The massive choking performances by this team, the defense being awful in the fourth quarter, the inconsistent play calling all around with Greg Roman, and the questionable decision making from John Harbaugh and the coaching staff. I get the fan outrage that's been here this season because the Ravens flock has really been pressing hard this season to just get Roman out of there. They've just been begging for Roman to be fired. I get that. I get the media right now that is tearing this team to shreds right now, and they are straight up criticizing everything the Ravens are doing. So the Ravens are getting blasted by the media. We were choking away games. Injuries started popping up. We lost Duvernay. We lost Bateman. Lamar has been injured. We don't know when he's coming back, and it's just been a whole mess. Yet despite all of this, despite everything that has happened this season, the Ravens found a way to make it to the playoffs. And they've made it to the playoffs with 2 games left in the season. That is big because now you can sit back and you could play around with this Lamar Jackson situation. We talked about this. Lamar Jackson, over the last couple weeks, has not practiced at all due to his knee injury, that PCL sprain he suffered back on December 4th. He has not practiced once. There's beliefs, and there's some hope that he will practice this week. Coach Harbaugh was asked about that, and Harbaugh gave the typical Harbaugh answer, "We'll see," which basically means I'm not telling you anything, and you'll figure out the case. You'll see what happens when he's out there. Like if he's out there, he's out there. If he's not, he's not. I'm not telling you a damn thing. But a lot of times Harbaugh says that. I basically assume that that player is not going to play because a lot of times when he says we'll see, we end up not seeing them on the field. So who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, there is some hope and belief that Lamar Jackson will practice this week. I don't think he's going to play, but he will practice this week. And in a situation like this, I talked about this too in the Ravens Falcons recap. I said now that the Ravens have secured a playoff spot, you could really play around with what you do here with the Lamar Jackson situation. You don't have to rush him back. His injury is supposed to be a 1 to 3 week injury. So it takes 1 to 3 weeks to heal, and then he can get that extra time to just spend, that extra time to just get healthy and get himself to be back to 100% before he comes back in practice. So you got plenty of time. You got 2 weeks now to really mess with this. You honestly do. But is that what the Ravens want to do? I still feel that Lamar should play at least one game, which should be that final game against Cincinnati just before he gets to the playoffs. Because if he's going to actually return, you don't want to throw him in the playoff game where he hasn't played football in over a month. Give him at least a game to try to get back in rhythm. That's just my purpose. But we're not really here to talk about the Lamar Jackson situation, at least not completely. We're not here to talk about whether or not he should play or if he's going to practice this week. We're here to talk about the playoff scenarios here, specifically between 2 teams. Our Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens flock, and the Cincinnati Bengals, what do y'all call yourself? The Jungle Cats? I don't know. The Jungle Cats. That's just what I'm gonna keep calling y'all. So the Ravens flock and the Jungle Cats are looking at the playoff scenarios. Right now, Baltimore sits at the number 5 seed in the AFC. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals sit at the number 3 spot with an 11-4 record in the AFC. There's 2 games left to go. Baltimore will face off against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football, and then the final week of the season, don't know what time that game is going to be. Probably will be a night game depending on how the playoff scenarios work, but the last game of the season will be at Cincinnati against the Bengals. Meanwhile, Cincinnati will be taking on the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football, and then, of course, they take us on in Week 18. So we've got 2 games left. They got 2 games left. A lot of playoff scenarios are being displayed here because we could see a change in terms of seeding between the Ravens and the Bengals, depending on how these final 2 games go. Usually, when it comes to these playoff scenarios or scenarios as to who wins the division, it ends up becoming quite complicated. Like you need to win here, and this team needs to lose this and do that. But in the Ravens situation, it's as simple as this: if the Ravens win out, they win the division. If they win their final two games, they win the AFC North. And I love that that's the situation, which is why I was happy that the Patriots did not pull off that comeback. I'm glad Cincinnati beat New England because that guaranteed Baltimore a playoff spot. It clinched us a playoff spot. I don't want to play around with what ifs because we don't know what's going to happen these last two games. As long as you're in the tournament, you don't got to worry about what happens the last 2 weeks because we could end up losing these final two games and finish the season 10-7, but we'll be in the playoffs guaranteed. Whereas maybe you end up messing around and you could miss the playoffs if you end up losing those last two games. You could have been what 11, not even. You could still been like 10-5, but if the Patriots would have beaten the Bengals, we would be first in the AFC North, but we wouldn't have clinched a playoff spot. And what if you end up losing those last two games and all of a sudden somehow you miss the playoffs? I don't want to mess with that. The fact that we're in the playoffs now is exactly what we need. I'm perfectly fine with that. We don't need to mess around with that. So I'm cool with it. But in terms of winning the division, it's still alive. There's still a chance. And it all comes down to Baltimore and Cincinnati. Baltimore and Cincinnati each hold the keys in their hands. If Cincinnati wins out, they win the division no matter what happens. If Baltimore wins out, they win the division no matter what happens. The only way that Cincinnati clinches the AFC North in week 17 is if the Baltimore Ravens lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football and Cincinnati beats the Bills on Monday Night Football. So if we were to lose our game against the Steelers and Cincinnati beats Buffalo, Cincinnati wins the AFC North. Week 18 really doesn't matter at that point. But if Baltimore wins that game against Pittsburgh, then win or lose, week 18 will be for the division. So it really comes down to that. Baltimore, you got the keys in your hand. This is a situation where you don't need help anymore. You're already in the playoffs, so you don't need help. If you win your last two games, you win the AFC North, and you will host a playoff game. Now, when it comes to playoff seedings, we will have to see because we don't exactly know how that's going to turn out. Not to mention, in terms of playoff matchups, we're not fully sure because the AFC South is still up for grabs, and it looks like Week 18 is going to be for the division because Jacksonville and Tennessee will go head to head in Week 18 to see who wins the AFC South. So that division still hasn't been clinched. Same with the AFC North. So we don't know what that matchup is. If Baltimore is the number 5 seed, we don't know what their number 4 seed matchup is going to be because we have to wait to see what happens between Tennessee and Jacksonville. If Baltimore is the number 3 seed, we will not know who that 6 seed matchup will be because, again, the Chargers are at that 6 seed, but they haven't clinched that 6 seed yet. They haven't clinched a playoff spot. So we're still waiting. There's a lot of moving pieces. The 6th seed could end up being Miami. Miami's currently the 7th seed in the AFC. They could end up moving to the 6th seed depending on what happens with the Chargers and the Colts tonight. So it's a lot of moving pieces. Nothing is 100% in terms of matchups. But one thing that can be said is that if the Baltimore Ravens win their final two games, no matter what happens, they win the AFC North. And at the same time, if they lose their final two games, no matter what happens, they will be in the playoffs. So no matter how this turns out these final 2 weeks, Ravens flock, Baltimore is a playoff team. Be it a home or a road wildcard playoff game, they will be in the postseason. And that's a great thing to say. So, that's why, me personally, I wasn't mad that the Patriots didn't pull off that comeback. I like being in a scenario where we got 2 games to go, especially with our quarterback trying to come back, or at least we believe he's trying to come back. I like to be in the scenario where we're already in the playoffs, trying to get Lamar back and trying to get ourselves healthy, and we can sit back and rest some of these guys. Think about it. Calais Campbell and Marcus Peters, they're dealing with injuries. We don't have to rush them back now. They don't have to see the field into the playoffs. If they're not 100%, there's no reason to put them back out there. So they're going to get a couple extra weeks to rest, and I love that that's the case. If you're fighting for a playoff spot, you cannot sit there and say, oh man, Marcus Peters and Calais Campbell, we just have to leave them out as long as we can. No, you don't have to say that anymore because you have a playoff spot. So now I don't need to see Marcus Peters until the postseason. Or if he's 100% healthy in week 18, throw him out there. Calais Campbell, if he's 100% healthy in week 18, throw him out there. At the same time, if he's not, you can wait until the postseason. That's what makes this great. And that's why I'm happy that the Baltimore Ravens were able to make the playoffs. So that's really your scenario here. We will probably go over playoff scenarios tomorrow, because we have to see what happens with the Chargers and the Colts. They're actually playing right now because obviously it's Monday Night Football. So we'll see what happens between them. If the Chargers win that game, they secure a playoff spot, which means they'll probably be the sixth seed. Also, I believe if they secure that spot, Baltimore is in a situation where I don't think they can go lower than the sixth seed at this point. So, I mean, if the Chargers end up getting that playoff spot, they'll most likely be a sixth seed themselves, and it could go either way. I don't know. We'll just have to see. There's a lot of moving pieces here in the postseason, but for me, not in the postseason, but in the playoff race. But for me personally, I'm just focused on the Ravens. Not to mention, I even talk about this, but the number one seed is still up for grabs, and Kansas City and Buffalo are still fighting for it, so anything can happen. The AFC is not solidified yet. Anything can happen at this point. So we're just sitting here and waiting to see what happens. But yeah, I'm just focused on the Ravens. I'm worried about the Ravens in terms of trying to win the AFC North. We've already secured a playoff spot. We will be in the postseason. We can have a sigh of relief. We can be happy we're in the playoffs again for the first time since 2020. Now it's time to focus on trying to win this division so that we can get a home playoff game and see if we can go on a run. We will see what happens, but it's just amazing to be in this situation, man. It's amazing to be in this situation, and it's all gonna go down on Sunday night. It's amazing to be in the situation where you're already in the playoff spot, and now you just have to fight to see who wins the division. Everything's gonna kick off Sunday night at Baltimore against the Steelers, and then obviously Monday night we'll see what sort of response the Bengals have against the Bills. But yeah, with that being said, that is pretty much all I gotta say here for today. Thank you guys for watching, and if Lamar Jackson's in practice tomorrow, we'll talk about it. But yeah, that's all I got, and I'm out of here, man. Peace.